Welcome back. What if I told you that your life will not change tomorrow unless you change something today? Many people wake up every morning with the same dream. I want a better life, more money, more confidence, better health, more respect. But at night, they sleep with the same excuses. This is the story of a young man named Armin. Armin was not poor. He was not rich. He was not a failure. He was not successful. He was just average. Every day he woke up late. He checked his phone for 1 hour. He said, "Tomorrow I will start." Tomorrow. The most dangerous word in the world. One day, Armin met an old man in the park. The old man was sitting quietly, watching the sunrise. Armin asked him, "Why do you wake up so early?" "You are old. You should rest." The old man smiled and said, "I wake up early because I don't want to waste what I have left." That sentence hit Armin hard. I don't want to waste what I have left. Armin suddenly realized something. The old man was afraid of losing time. But Armin was wasting time like he had unlimited years. That night, Armin couldn't sleep. He asked himself, "What am I doing with my life?" He was waiting for motivation, waiting for the perfect moment, waiting for someone to push him. But nobody was coming. No hero, no miracle, no perfect day. Just him. The next morning, something small changed. Not big, not dramatic. He woke up 30 minutes earlier. That's it. He didn't become rich. He didn't become famous. He just made his bed. It sounds small, almost stupid. But that small action made him feel different. For the first time, he controlled his morning, instead of his phone controlling him. The next day, he added one more habit: 10 minutes of reading. The third day, 15 minutes of exercise. Slowly, something powerful started to grow inside him. Confidence. Not loud confidence. Not fake confidence. Quiet confidence. Because every day he was proving something to himself. I can change. Life does not change in one day. But your direction can. Most people want a new life. But they don't want new habits. They want results. But they don't want discipline. Armin understood one powerful truth. Your future is built by your daily actions, not your dreams, not your plans, not your wishes, your actions. And the most powerful part, he didn't wait for next year. He didn't wait for Monday. He started on a normal Tuesday. No special date. No perfect weather. No big announcement. Just a decision. And that decision slowly began to change his life. This is how change starts. Not with noise. Not with motivation videos. Not with big promises. But with one small decision. Repeated every single day. This is only the beginning. Because when you change your habits, you change your identity. And when you change your identity, you change your life. The next morning, the sun slowly filled his room with light. Armin opened his eyes before the alarm rang, not because he felt excited, not because he suddenly became a different person, but because something inside him had shifted. He lay in bed for a few seconds, staring at the ceiling. His phone was next to him. As always. The old habit whispered, just 5 minutes. Scroll a little. Check notifications. See what the world is doing. His hand moved toward the phone, then stopped. He remembered the old man's words. I don't want to waste what I have left. Man sat up. Nothing dramatic happened. No music playing in the background. No powerful speech. Just a quiet decision. He stood up and made his bed again. The same small action as yesterday, but this time easier. In the kitchen, he made a simple breakfast. Usually, he would eat while scrolling. This time, he sat at the table without his phone. It felt strange. Almost uncomfortable. Silence can be scary when you are not used to it. His mind tried to escape. Check your messages. See what's new. You deserve a little break. But he stayed still. For the first time in a long time, he was alone with his thoughts. And he noticed something surprising. His thoughts were not his enemy. They were just messy, unorganized, full of noise from too much information and too little action. After breakfast, he opened a book. Just 10 minutes. That was the promise he made to himself. Not 1 hour. Not 3 hours. Just 10 minutes. 10 Minuten vor. He felt bored. 10 minutes to quit. At minute 8, he almost closed the book. But he finished the 10 minutes. It was not about the book. It was about discipline. Later that day, nothing extraordinary happened. He didn't get a job offer. He didn't receive life-changing news. The world did not reward him for waking up early. And that's when he understood something important. Success does not clap for you in the beginning. No one notices when you wake up earlier. No one celebrates when you read 10 pages. No one gives you a trophy for saying no to your phone. But these quiet victories are building something invisible. Character. That evening, Armin felt tired. Not physically, mentally. Changing even small habits requires energy. It is easier to stay the same. It is easier to follow old routines. His mind tried again. You've done enough. You can skip tomorrow. One day doesn't matter. But he knew the truth now. One day always matters. Because one day becomes 2. 2 becomes a week. A week becomes a month. Before sleeping, he wrote 1 sentence in a notebook. Today, I kept my promise to myself. It was a simple sentence, but it meant everything. For years, he broke promises to himself. I will start tomorrow. I will try harder. I will change. But today, he didn't break it. And slowly, something stronger than motivation began to grow inside him. Self-respect. Not loud, not visible, but real. He realized that changing your life is not about doing something huge once. It is about doing something small consistently. The world outside was still the same, but inside him a quiet transformation had begun. The days did not suddenly become easier. On the third morning, Armin did not wake up feeling strong or inspired. He felt normal, a little sleepy, little lazy. The excitement of a new beginning was already fading. This is the part nobody talks about. The middle. Not the dramatic start. Not the successful ending. Just the quiet, boring middle where nothing seems to change. He sat on the edge of his bed and looked at his phone again. The habit was still there. It didn't disappear just because he made one good decision yesterday. Habits are patient. They wait. He took a deep breath and stood up before his mind could argue too much. He had learned something important. If you think too long, you lose. So he moved. That day, he decided to go for a short walk. Not to become athletic. Not to impress anyone. Just to clear his head. Outside, the world looked the same. People were rushing. Cars were moving. Everyone seemed busy. For a moment, he wondered if his small changes even mattered. What difference does it make? He thought. Then he remembered something simple. Big results come from invisible progress. When you plant a seed, you don't see the roots growing. But that doesn't mean nothing is happening underground. As he walked, he noticed how often his mind tried to distract him. Random memories, old regrets, future worries. His brain was like a noisy room that had never been cleaned. Before, he escaped that noise with his phone. Now, he had to face it. It wasn't comfortable, but it was honest. Later that afternoon, he tried to work on a skill he had always postponed. He set a timer for 20 minutes. Just 20. In the first 5 minutes, he felt slow. In the next 5, he made mistakes. By minute 15, he wanted to quit. His mind whispered again, "You're not good at this." That sentence used to stop him every time. But now he asked himself a different question. How can I be good if I never practice? It was such a simple thought, almost obvious. Yet it changed everything. He finished the 20 minutes. It was not perfect work. It was not impressive. But it was done. That evening, he felt something new. Not happiness. Not pride. Momentum. A small push forward. He realized that motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes like the weather. But action creates its own energy. The more he did, the easier it became to continue. Still, doubts didn't disappear. When he checked his social media later, He saw people showing perfect lives. Success stories, smiles, achievements. For a second, he felt behind. They are ahead of me, he thought. But then he understood something deeper. He was no longer competing with them. He was competing with the version of himself who gave up too quickly. And compared to that person, he was already winning before going to sleep. He opened his notebook again today. I showed up even when I didn't feel like it. The sentence was simple, but powerful. Because showing up on hard days is what separates a dream from a reality. Change was still slow. Results were still invisible. But inside him, discipline was becoming stronger than excuses. And that quiet strength was beginning to shape a new life by the end of the week. Something interesting happened. Nothing on the outside looked different. His room was the same. His routine was still simple. No dramatic success. No big applause from the world. But inside Armin, a quiet stability was forming. The first few days were full of resistance. His mind fought every change. IT claimed. It searched for comfort. It tried to negotiate. Skip today. Start again next week. You've already improved enough. But now the voice was softer. Not gone, just weaker. He began to understand that discipline is like a muscle. At first, it shakes. It feels painful. You doubt IT. But the more you use it, the stronger it becomes. One afternoon, he faced a real test. He had planned to practice for 30 minutes. The day had been long. He felt tired. His head was heavy. The old version of him would have said, "You deserve rest." And technically, that voice wasn't wrong. Rest is important. But he asked himself a better question. Am I tired or am I avoiding effort? The answer was uncomfortable. He wasn't exhausted. He was resisting discomfort. So he made a deal with himself. Just 10 minutes. If after 10 minutes he truly felt drained, he would stop. He started. The first minutes were slow. His focus was weak. But something familiar happened. Around minute 8 or 9, his mind adjusted. The resistance faded. He entered that small zone where effort feels natural. He didn't stop at 10 minutes. He finished the full 30. When he closed his notebook, he felt a different kind of satisfaction. Not excitement. Not celebration. Confidence. Not the loud kind that shows off. The quiet kind that whispers you can trust yourself. Set was new. For years, he had broken promises to himself. Start Monday. Wake up early. Learn something new. Exercise. Improve. Every broken promise slowly destroyed his self-belief. Now, every kept promise was rebuilding it. He also noticed something else. His relationship with time was changing. Before, time felt like something he had a lot of. Endless days. Endless chances. If he wasted today, tomorrow would fix it. Now he saw time differently. Each day was like a small investment. You either use it or lose it. There is no pause button, no fund. One evening, he met an old friend who asked, "Why are you suddenly so serious?" Armin smiled. He wasn't serious. He was intentional. There's a difference. Serious people look stressed. Intentional people look calm. He didn't explain everything. Some changes are too personal to describe. Some growth is invisible to others. That night, lying in bed, he reflected on something important. He used to think change required a big breakthrough moment, a powerful speech, a shocking event, rock bottom. But real change, he realized, is quieter than that. It is choosing to wake up when you don't want to. It is choosing to focus when distractions are easier. It is choosing long-term growth over short-term pleasure. No one sees these choices, but they shape everything. For the first time, he wasn't chasing motivation. He wasn't waiting to feel ready. He was acting before he felt ready. And strangely, that made him feel stronger. The world outside was still unpredictable. Problems still existed. Doubts still appeared. But now he had proof of something powerful. He could control his actions, not the results, not other people, not the future, just his next decision. And sometimes that is enough to change an entire life. A few weeks later, the changes were no longer just actions. They were becoming part of who Armin was. He no longer argued with himself every morning. He still felt lazy sometimes. He still had moments of doubt. But the internal battle was shorter now, cleaner. Instead of thinking for 20 minutes about whether to wake up, he simply stood up. That small speed of decision made a huge difference. He began to notice how much of his old life had been controlled by hesitation. He would think about starting, think about improving, think about changing. But thinking is safe. Action is risky. Action exposes you to failure, to mistakes, to comfort. And for years, he avoided that risk. One afternoon, while working on his new routine, he made a mistake. Simple one. Something small. But it reminded him of the old fear. What if I'm not good enough? That sentence used to stop him completely. This time, it slowed him down for a few minutes. He felt the frustration, the irritation, the temptation to quit. He almost closed everything. Almost. But instead of escaping, he stayed with the discomfort. He realized something powerful in that moment. Mistakes are not signs that you should stop. They are signs that you are growing. If you never fail, you are probably not trying hard enough. That thought changed his reaction completely. He corrected the mistake, slowly, patiently, and when he finished, the result wasn't perfect. But it was better than yesterday. And that became his new focus. Not perfection. Progress. Arman also started protecting his environment. He cleaned his workspace, removed unnecessary distractions, turned off useless notifications, organized his schedule. He understood that willpower alone is weak. If you keep temptation in front of you, you will eventually give in. But if you design your environment for success, discipline becomes easier. He stopped spending hours around negative conversations. He chose friends who talked about ideas, goals, improvement, not just complaints, because energy is contagious. Slowly, he felt his mindset shifting. Before, he would ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Now he asked, "What can I learn from this?" Before, he would wait for confidence before acting. Now he acted, and confidence followed. One evening, while walking home, he noticed something unusual. He felt calm, not because life was perfect, but because he was no longer fighting himself. That inner war between who he wanted to be and what he actually did was slowly ending. His actions were aligning with his goals, and that alignment creates peace. He still had big dreams, a better career, financial stability, growth, impact. But he was no longer obsessed with the final result. He was focused on today. What can I improve today? What small promise can I keep today? He understood something many people ignore. Your life does not change when you reach the goal. It changes when you change your daily standards. If your standard is comfort, you will live comfortably average. If your standard is growth, you will feel uncomfortable. But you will rise. Arman chose growth, not because it was easy, but because staying the same had become more painful than changing. And that was the real turning point. Not motivation, not inspiration, not fear or decision. A clear, quiet decision that he would no longer live on autopilot. And once a person turns off autopilot, the direction of their life begins to change forever. The shift did not happen in one dramatic moment. It happened in repetition. Every morning he kept his word. Every evening he reviewed his day. Every time he felt resistance, he leaned into it instead of running away. And something subtle began to form inside him. Identity. He no longer saw himself as someone trying to change. He began to see himself as someone who does hard things. That difference mattered, because when you are trying, quitting is always an option. But when it becomes who you are, quitting feels like betrayal. One rainy afternoon, everything felt heavy again. The weather was dark. His energy was low. His progress felt slow. He looked at his notebook and thought, "Is this even working?" That question is dangerous. It's the moment where most people stop. Not because they failed, but because results are invisible. Growth is silent at first. You don't see muscles forming after one workout. You don't see knowledge expanding after one study session. You don't see character building after one disciplined choice. But it's happening. Armin almost convinced himself to take the day off. Not real rest, just lazy escape. Old habits were still nearby, waiting. He picked up his phone and scrolled for a few minutes. It felt familiar, easy, comfortable. But it also felt empty. For the first time, he could clearly see the difference between comfort and fulfillment. Comfort relaxes you for a moment. Fulfillment strengthens you for a lifetime. He locked the phone and placed it face down. Instead of forcing himself into a big task, he reduced the goal. 15 focused minutes. C'est was all. And once again, starting was the hardest part. By Minute 10 came edged. By minute 15, he didn't want to stop. Momentum returned. That evening, he understood something powerful. Discipline is not about being intense every day. It's about refusing to quit on bad days. Anyone can be productive when they feel motivated. The real growth happens when you show up without motivation. He also began noticing how differently he reacted to problems. Before, small setbacks ruined his mood. One mistake meant, I'm failing. Now, mistakes became data. Feedback. Information. He adjusted instead of judging himself. That small change in mindset reduced his stress more than anything else. One night, sitting quietly, he reflected on who he used to be. A person waiting for the perfect time. Waiting for confidence. Waiting for clarity. Now he understood something simple. Clarity comes from action. You don't find direction by thinking forever. You find it by moving, adjusting, learning. The more he acted, the clearer his path became. His goals felt less like dreams and more like destinations he was slowly walking toward. He was not special, not more talented, not lucky. The only difference was consistency. And consistency is boring. There are no fireworks in consistency. No dramatic music, just repetition. But repetition builds mastery. Repetition builds confidence. Repetition builds a new life. Armin realized that change is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming the person you were capable of being all along. And with each small promise he kept, he was getting closer to that version of himself. Not perfect, but strong. Not faster than everyone else, but faster than who he used to be as the weeks turned into months. The changes were no longer fragile. They were stable. Armin didn't wake up every day feeling powerful. Some mornings were heavy. Some nights were restless. Life did not suddenly become easier just because he had discipline. But he had built something stronger than motivation. He had built standards. Before, his standard was simple. Do what feels good. Now, his standard was different. Do what moves me forward. That shift changed the way he made decisions. One evening, he was invited to spend hours doing nothing productive, justing like he used to. There was nothing wrong with relaxing. But he knew the difference between intentional rest and unconscious escape. He paused and asked himself, Will this help me grow, or is it just comfortable? The old Armin would not even ask that question. He chose to join for a short time, enjoy the moment. Then leave early to continue his work. Balance, not extremes. Set was new. He was no longer all or nothing. He wasn't trying to be perfect. He was trying to be consistent. And consistency began to show results. His focus improved. His skills sharpened. His confidence became visible. People started noticing. You've changed, someone told him. He didn't feel different. He felt aligned. For the first time, what he said he would do matched what he actually did. That alignment created a quiet power. But growth brings a new challenge. Comfort at a higher level. He realized that once you improve, your mind tries to relax again. You've done enough. You're better than before. You can slow down now. That voice sounds reasonable, even intelligent. But Armin understood something dangerous about it. If you become satisfied too early, you stop evolving. He wasn't chasing endless success. He wasn't trying to exhaust himself. But he refused to go back to average effort. He increased his standards slightly. If he practiced 20 minutes before, now it became 30. If he exercised twice a week, now 3 times. Not extreme changes, just steady elevation. He also began investing in his mindset, reading about growth, listening to ideas that challenged him, surrounding himself with people who aimed higher, because he understood this truth. Your environment shapes your expectations. If everyone around you accepts mediocrity, you will too. If people around you push themselves, you feel pulled upward. One night, he looked at his old photos, old routines, old habits. He didn't feel shame. He felt gratitude. Because without that version of himself, he would not appreciate this one. Change had not made him perfect. He still had fears, still had doubts, still had difficult days. But now, those things did not control him. He controlled his response. And that is the real definition of growth. Not the absence of problems, but the ability to face them without collapsing. Armin finally understood something powerful. Changing your life is not about adding more to it. It's about removing what weakens you and strengthening what builds you. Remove excuses. Strengthen discipline. Remove distractions. Strengthen focus. Remove self-doubt. Strengthen action. The transformation was no longer external. It was internal. And when the internal world changes, the external world eventually follows. There came a day when Armin realized something strange. He was no longer forcing himself to change. He was living differently without thinking about it. The early mornings were normal now. Focused work felt natural. Discipline no longer felt like punishment. It felt like self-respect. He remembered how hard the first week had been. How every small habit felt like lifting a heavy weight. Now those same actions felt light. That's the power of repetition. At first, you push the habit. Later, the habit pushes you. One afternoon, he faced a serious setback. A plan he had worked on for weeks failed. The result was not what he expected. No reward, no recognition. For a moment, the old frustration came back. What's the point? Maybe this isn't working. But something inside him stayed calm. Before, failure meant stop. Now, failure meant adjust. He sat down, reviewed what went wrong, and wrote down lessons instead of complaints. That reaction proved how much he had grown. Because real change is not visible when things go well. It is visible when things go wrong. He didn't quit. He refined his strategy, improved his approach. Try again. And even though the outcome was still uncertain, his mindset was steady. He also began noticing a deeper shift. He no longer needed constant validation. Before, he wanted quick results to prove he was improving. He wanted signs, evidence, applause. Now, the work itself was enough. Finishing a task gave him satisfaction. Keeping a promise gave him pride. Improving 1% gave him momentum. He wasn't addicted to outcomes anymore. He was committed to growth. One quiet evening, sitting alone, he asked himself a powerful question. If no one ever sees my progress, would I still continue? The answer surprised him. Yes, because this was no longer about impressing others. It was about becoming someone he respected. That is when he understood the deepest truth of change. Changing your life is not about building a new image. It's about building a stronger character. Image can be fake. Character cannot. Image depends on others. Character depends on you. Armin felt stronger, not because his life was perfect, but because he trusted himself. He trusted that he would show up. Trusted that he would try again. Trusted that he would not escape when things became uncomfortable. And that trust is rare. Most people doubt themselves because they repeatedly break their own promises. He had stopped doing that. He was not chasing a dramatic transformation anymore. He was building a stable one. Slow. Intentional. Lasting. The boy who once waited for the right time had disappeared. In his place stood someone who understood a simple truth. The right time is created by action. And with every consistent day, Armin was no longer just changing his habits. He was redesigning his future. Months had passed. Yet Armin's transformation was still unfolding quietly. No one clapped for him. No sudden success appeared overnight. But he felt it deeply inside. He woke up earlier without effort. He worked with focus without forcing himself. He read, exercised, and learned because he wanted to, not because someone told him to. These small actions no longer felt like chores. They had become part of who he was. One afternoon, he encountered a situation that would have crushed him months ago. A project he poured time into was rejected. Normally, he would have spiraled, blamed circumstances, and given up. This time, he paused. He didn't panic. He didn't react immediately. He asked himself, what can I learn from this? How can I grow? That question alone had changed everything. Instead of failure, he saw feedback. Instead of frustration, he felt clarity. Instead of fear, he discovered resilience. He also realized that consistency beats intensity. Doing a little every day was more powerful than occasional bursts of effort. The quiet repetition of small, meaningful actions built confidence, skills, and momentum that no instant success could ever provide. Armin's relationships began to improve too. People noted steady energy. He no longer sought validation or comparison. His life was no longer dictated by likes, comments, or approval. Instead, he focused on his own growth and what truly mattered. By now, mornings were sacred. Nights were reflective. Every decision carried purpose, even when life threw obstacles in his way. He approached them with discipline and clarity. One evening, writing in his journal, he understood the greatest lesson of all. Change is not about dramatic events. It's not about motivation or waiting for the perfect moment. Real change comes from showing up, making small choices consistently, and refusing to quit even when it's uncomfortable. And as he closed his notebook that night, he smiled. Because Armin knew now the life he wanted wasn't built in a single day. It was built one choice at a time, one habit at a time, one act of courage, discipline, and persistence after another. His future was no longer uncertain. It was in his hands. Armin had reached a point where change was no longer an effort. It had become his nature. The days of hesitation, fear, and self-doubt had faded into distant memories. He woke each morning not because motivation called him, but because he had trained himself to act regardless of how he felt. Every small choice, every seemingly insignificant habit, had compounded into a life that moved steadily toward the vision he had once only dreamed of. He remembered the early weeks vividly, the battle with his own mind, the endless questioning of whether he was capable, the lure of comfort that whispered at every moment. He remembered how easy it would have been to give up, to return to the life that required no effort and no discomfort. Yet here he was, months later, living proof that small, consistent actions create enormous transformation. Armin had learned that discipline is not about performing heroic feats or sustaining extreme effort. It is about showing up when it is hard, about honoring the commitments you make to yourself, about choosing growth over comfort one decision at a time. The true power of change lies in the invisible work, waking early, focusing on tasks fully, learning when tired, exercising when unmotivated, and reflecting even when frustrated. That work builds identity, and identity shapes destiny. He reflected on his failures, once terrifying, now seen as teachers. Every setback had been reframed as feedback, every mistake as a lesson. When projects didn't go as planned, he no longer panicked or blamed external factors. Instead, he paused, assessed, adjusted, and tried again. Discomfort was no longer a signal to stop. It was a signal to grow. That was the invisible strength that had carried him further than motivation ever could. Armin had also learned the importance of his environment. He minimized distractions, removed unnecessary clutter, and protected his time and energy. He surrounded himself with ideas, people, and habits that aligned with his goals. He realized that discipline alone is fragile. Structure, environment, and conscious choices amplify it. He no longer wasted energy on mindless scrolling, toxic conversations, or unproductive routines. As weeks turned into months, Armin noticed that internal transformation was shaping every area of his life. His confidence became quiet and steady, no longer dependent on recognition or comparison. He measured himself only against his own progress. Each day, he asked, "Am I stronger, wiser, or more disciplined than I was yesterday?" That became his compass, his internal guide that never wavered. He learned the subtle power of consistency. One day's effort might feel negligible, even meaningless, but repeated daily, it created mastery. The tiny, almost invisible actions, 10 minutes of focused study, 5 pages of reading. A disciplined morning routine compounded into extraordinary outcomes. Motivation might come and go. Inspiration might fluctuate. But consistency was permanent. It quietly reshaped his life. Armin also embraced patience. Change does not happen overnight. True transformation is incremental, built through repetition, reflection, and refinement. He accepted that setbacks were part of the process. That growth often feels invisible at first, and that the journey is as important as the destination. He no longer feared discomfort, uncertainty, or challenge. He sought them as opportunities to strengthen his character. He began to understand a deeper truth. External results are temporary, but internal change is lasting. Success comes not from dramatic events, sudden breakthroughs, or perfect conditions, but from the person you become in the process. By showing up daily, by keeping promises to yourself, by persevering when it's hard, you build resilience, strength, and clarity that no circumstance can take away. One quiet evening, Armin sat by his window, watching the city lights flicker. He thought about how far he had come, not just in achievements, but in identity. He was no longer someone trying to change. He was someone who acts. That simple, powerful shift defined him. It was no longer about perfection or speed. It was about consistent, deliberate growth. He realized that the only thing that truly shapes a life is action. Armin smiled, knowing the journey was ongoing. There would always be new challenges, new setbacks, and new distractions. but he had learned how to navigate them. He had learned how to trust himself, how to create momentum, and how to stay committed when the world offered easy excuses to stop. He understood that transformation is never about luck, it is about showing up every single day for yourself. And so, as he closed his journal, he whispered to himself, "Today I acted. Today I grew. Today I moved closer to the life I want." That simple affirmation captured everything he had learned. Life would never be perfect, but it could be purposeful. It could be intentional. And it could be deeply satisfying. Because he was finally in control of the person he was becoming. To everyone watching, take this to heart. Change begins the moment you decide to act. Don't wait for motivation. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Don't wait for certainty. Start today. Take small steps. Stay consistent and trust the process. Each choice builds momentum. Each action shapes identity. Each day moves you closer to the life you are capable of creating. Thank you for joining this journey. Keep showing up, keep taking steps, and keep moving forward. Your life is waiting for you to act. I'll see you in the next video.